Good afternoon and welcome to our conversation with Randy Myers of Blazer News Network. My name is Eli Corcelius. I'm a senior at Valley View High School, and today we are joined by East Arkansas broadcasters and voice of the Blazers, Randy Myers. We would like to thank all our viewers and studio student workers for joining us today. The purpose of this interview is to get to know our local media professionals in our area in a more down-to-earth way. Let's start back with a look at your path to where you are now. What was it like growing up in Egypt?
Pretty boring, kind of. I grew up out in the country, so yeah, but it was a good childhood. I enjoyed it. I grew up like, typical country life. I grew up in the middle of farm country, although I didn't live in a farm family or grow up in a farm family, but I was certainly surrounded by it. But, I enjoyed it for the most part.
Yes, sir. Did you always want to be on the radio?
That's an interesting question. Of course, I went to grade school at Egypt, and which is part of the West Side School District. But way back in the 1970s, there was still an actual grade school at Egypt. So I had a teacher named Clarabelle White. She was like an English and reading teacher and instructor, and so I think I was in either the fourth grade, I believe, and we were reading out loud in class one day, like passages from a book. And after I had read my passage one day, before she went on to the next student, she stopped me and asked me if I'd ever considered, a career in broadcasting. And at that time, I never had. But as soon as she said that, it was like, the wheels started spinning, and I thought about it, and I thought, she may be onto something there. So that's kind of what set the hook and planted the idea in my mind, and it was something I kind of zeroed in on from that point forward.
Yes, sir. How long did it take you to get to where you are today?
Well, I got my first broadcasting job, a radio job at KRLW Radio in Walnut Ridge right after I got out of high school. I graduated high school in 1981, and I started working there part-time like 2 weeks after I got out of high school while I was going to school as a freshman at ASU. I was fortunate in that I knew some people who worked up there, some people in the business, and so I just started hanging out there early before I graduated high school. I just went up there just to watch them work, and I kind of got in their way, and I guess they kind of figured, if this kid's going to be hanging around here so much, we may as well put him on the payroll and let him do some work for us. So that's kind of how I got my foot in the door.
Yes, sir. What are some things on the job that you've used problem solved in the moment to work on live radio?
Well, when you're doing live sports broadcasts as much as I have, you kind of got to be prepared for anything because, especially on the technical end, because usually, as the old saying goes, if something can go wrong at one point, it probably will. So the best thing you can do, or from my perspective, is to, when you're going somewhere to do a game, get there very early. Get there, at least an hour before you're planning on going on the air. Get your equipment set up, test it. And troubleshoot, make sure you're not going to have any problems, and so that would be my suggestion on something like that, is to just prepare a lot, get there early, and even though you may have to sit around twiddling your thumbs for a little while, it's worth it in the long run, rather than having to get there. If you get there late and you're having to rush, because then you're going to be flustered when you go on the air, and it's just a whole lot better to get there early and be prepared and be ready.
Yes, sir. What are some of your favorite memories on the radio? And specifically, what memories come to mind when the voice of the Blazers?
Oh, wow. There's a lot of good ones, specifically as my voice of the Blazers. One of my favorite memories, and somebody asked me this question not too long ago, I don't remember the exact year, but it was roughly 5 or 6 years ago when I think when they were doing the blended conferences where they had the 5A and 6A playing together, and but they separated the district or regional tournament. So we had our own 5A district tournament, and the 5A East District basketball tournament that year was at Batesville. And, Valley View had an okay year, not a great year, but a pretty good year. I don't remember exactly where we finished in the conference standings, but we got hot late in the season, in the postseason, got hot in the conference tournament, and ended up rolling into the district tournament finals, and we had to play Nettleton, and Nettleton had beaten us fairly handily, or convincingly, at least twice during the regular season. And we went into that game without Reed Grady, who was our leading scorer and rebounder. And I don't know how many people may remember Reed, but he was 6 foot 8 inches tall, so obviously he was a factor. But Reed was also a dual sport athlete. He was a swimmer, and he was also involved in the state swim meet that same weekend. I think that was like in Fort Smith or somewhere completely on the other side of the state. So obviously there was no way he could be there with the basketball team. So we went into that short game against a team that had already beaten us twice in the regular season shorthanded, and we pulled off the upset, and we won it like on a tip-in at the buzzer. So that certainly stands out as probably my favorite basketball memory. My favorite football memory, there's a bunch of those, man. Maybe the first year we beat Batesville at Batesville, and that gave us at least a share of the conference title about 3 or 4 seasons ago. That one will always stand out because I remember, I had Coach Cockrell come up in the press box for a post-game interview, and we were both so happy we just hugged each other as soon as he walked in the booth. So that certainly stands out as one of them.
Yes, sir. How do you think being on air has changed you in your life?
I don't know, other than the fact that because I'm never comfortable using the word celebrity, but I mean, because I've been on the air in both radio and television for as long as I have, a lot of people know who I am. So I guess I'm a little bit more cognizant of just, maybe protecting or being a little cognizant of my public image, I guess. So.
Yes, sir. Did you have to, going back a little bit, did you have to work hard to find your radio voice, or did it just come natural?
It kind of came natural. I've always had a big voice, for lack of a better word, a big mouth, some people would call it, But I've always had a strong voice. In fact, like I said, when I was reading aloud in my class that time, my teacher, she commented, she said, "You just have a good voice. You project your voice, and you read well." So I guess it's just kind of a natural talent that I was blessed with. I mean, I had to refine it somewhat. Like I said, I grew up in the country in Egypt, or near Egypt, Arkansas, so I had to kind of get rid of my country accent maybe a little bit. And I can still fall back on that if I need to, but overall, I would say that's about the only thing that I really needed to work on that much.
Do you have any radio favorite memories, being on the radio?
Oh, gosh. Yeah, I mean, just, and most of them involve sports broadcasting. I mean, other than the ones I've mentioned, I don't know, if I have any specific other ones. I mean, I was the voice of the Bible Chickasaws for most of the 90s, and certainly, that was a pretty good time for me in that. Because during that span, I was around some really good coaches, and I was still kind of a kid at the time. I mean, I was in my 20s and 30s, but I kind of still considered myself a kid. But I learned a lot. I was blessed to be around some really good basketball coaches, in particular, guys like Bill Tyre and David Hickson, and I broadcast high school and junior college basketball over there. And, I knew the basics of basketball okay, but being around those guys, and I would hang out with them and watch their teams practice. And I learned a lot more about the intricacies of the game of basketball. So I feel like that always served me pretty well.
Yes, sir. Do you have any more goals or ambitions moving on from where you are that you want to reach in the media?
I'd like to be able to call a state championship game for a team that I cover on a regular basis. That's the only dream, I guess, as far as my, my sports broadcasting career that's yet to elude me. I mean, I've broadcast some state championship games, but it would really be cool for me to get to call Valley View in a state championship game before I, hang up the microphone, so to speak.
Yes, sir. That's all. Thank you so much, Randy, and thank you for all our viewers. This has been an interview with Randy Myers on Blazer News Network.